Today I'm going to show you how to make a mold from an object using silicone that you can buy at the hardware store. This is the final piece that we'll be making, that this mold will be used to make, although today I'll just be walking you through the mold making process. In my work, I use mold making to create glass castings like this one. This is a crystal casting. And I've also used mold making to create resin castings like this one of a skull. So it has a lot of possibilities and is a really interesting material and process. The mold that we'll be making today can be used to cast waxes, resins. It can even be used to cast plaster or concrete into. It's a really versatile material. It's not food safe or skin safe though, and shouldn't be used on your body or to pour foods or chocolates into. I'm planning to make a mold of this climbing rope piece that I wove together. This is a pattern that you can find online. It's called an ocean plat mat or a thump mat. To make a mold that you can use many times, it's important that the object is completely sealed so that the silicone won't stick. And so anything natural, materials with open pores will need to be sealed. A great way to seal any object before you make your mold is to spray the piece with a final spray of Krylon acrylic spray. Silicone won't stick to acrylic surfaces, and so it's a great way to give a final coat at the end to make sure that your object will be released from the mold. All right, let's get started.
It's important that the object you're casting is fully secured to the work board during the mold making process. You can do this by hot gluing your model to the work board, but often it's easiest to just roll out a bed of clay. Today I'm using plasticine, a sulfur-free, oil-based clay that can be found at many hobby and craft stores. I continue to roll out the clay until it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. I want to have a nice and smooth surface to set my climbing rope model into. Once this is done, I can cut away any excess clay. I like to do this by tracing the profile of my model. You want the edges of the clay to be largely perpendicular to the work board. You want a straight surface that doesn't give you any undercuts or places where the silicone could grip the mold and be more difficult to remove. I'll continue to work with the clay until the sides are smooth. I like to take a little bit of extra time here and make sure that I work out any imperfections. It's important to make the model as perfect as possible before you make the final mold. Some models like this one are flat enough that you don't necessarily need a damming system or cottles to surround it when you make your mold. But nonetheless, I like to add this to keep everything clean and to use as little material as possible. I'll mark my board about 1/2 inch out from the model, and then I'll draw a perimeter around the entire piece. This doesn't have to be exact, it's just helpful as a guide when you're gluing down the flashing later. When I'm ready to apply my flashing, I can use a little bit of clay to hold it in place while I'm wrapping it around the model. I want to make sure and apply an even layer of glue to the entire edge of the flashing. If I see any light coming through, then you know that you may have a gap in the glue. I don't want to let any of my silicone material flow out of the mold.
So I'm going to wait and make sure that I let it cool. You want to be careful when you're putting on the hot glue, because if you go back over it time and again, you'll remelt the glue as you work, and so you want to try to do it once if you can. So I think that's held enough that I can start to move. The silicone is not going to be so thin that it'll flow through tiny cracks, but you do still want to make sure that this is as watertight as you can make it, and you've filled all the seams and cracks with glue. And then looking through, you can sort of see if there's anywhere that you know you missed. Sometimes you can sort of see light. It's important for this project to make sure that we work cleanly and safely. So you really want to work in your paint shirt, have an apron if you, wear one if you have one, and you also want to make sure that you wear gloves. Ideally, you're wearing some sort of nitrile glove. Nitrile is not going to cause a reaction. Latex gloves also work. Work surface, I often use a sewing or cutting mat. These are a plastic rubber material, and silicone won't bond. So, and what I've done for a long time is just open up a trash bag. It doesn't have to be a heavy duty or anything, but you just open it up and spread it over the table. You can even cut open the sides here and cut them down and create a really long covering for your table if you need, and that's just going to protect the surface and make it an easy cleanup. When we're ready to mix our materials, I'm going to go ahead and get my nitrile gloves on. I'll take my mixing container and fill it to about, I want to make sure that I have a little over halfway. You don't want to have super hot water while you're working. Heat will accelerate the curing process of this material, and it's already, because it's an acetic acid silicone, it's going to cure a little bit faster than the others that you might be normally working with. Next in the process, I take a dish soap. The brand isn't important. What you're wanting here is for the glycerin in this product to help speed up the curing process of the silicone when we're working with it. So for about 48 ounces, I might do 3 to 4 ounces of soap, but I'm just gonna squirt some in. You want it to be enough that the material will start to stick to itself and not stick to you as well. Once I have that mixed, I'm going to go ahead and start adding the silicone. I'm going to reach in and start to sort of massage the silicone and try to get it into a ball so that I can apply it to my model. As a last step before I mix my silicone up, I'm going to add some acrylic paint. I'm going to try to work the acrylic throughout the silicone evenly. This really helps the material not stick to you for whatever reason. I'm really going to smell it now. And this is when you do want to make sure that you're wearing gloves, because this will burn your hands with that vinegar. So once you've done that, and you've kind of squeezed out as much of that extra water as you can go ahead and start applying it. And you just want to push it into all the details and try to get any little bubbles out. So I want to kind of not try to let it fold over on itself. And it does look, you can tell that we are going to need more. But I always try to make sure with the first batch that I really get all of my model covered. Once your mold is fully cured, you can go ahead and take it off the model. You want to make sure that you do this only after it's done curing and not before, because once you take it off, it will never go back on the model the same as when it was first made. So once I'm ready, I can go ahead and loosen it around the sides. I've gone ahead and done this. And then I'll run a scraper or some sort of edge. Sometimes, if it's really gripping the board, your work surface, you can grip it you can put the board against yourself and sort of get some leverage to pull the mold back with. But whatever works, you can do. And then you want to just pull it back and be gentle. If it's resisting anywhere, to not tear the rubber. It should come up unless it really creeped into some crevice that wasn't sealed and got stuck. If it is bonded to your material, you want to kind of just carefully lift that back and see where it's sticking, and then cut it away instead of ripping it and tearing, because that could make a larger, that could do more damage to your piece. So once I'm done, I'm going to pull this back, and it comes right off.
Hi everyone, so once your mold is finished and completely cured, you can use it to make multiple different kinds of castings. It'll work with wax. This is paraffin wax. This is available at many hobby stores. I like to use this just because it's readily available and not very expensive. Paraffin or beeswax will work well. This is Victory Brown microcrystalline wax. This is more of a specialty casting wax, and this is available along with beeswax, and many other mold making supplies are available at Reynolds Advanced Materials. So just to review, we started from my rope model, which I waxed and set to my mold board. I then made a mold of that piece using silicone rubber, GE 100% silicone. I tinted it with some purple acrylic paint, and it really came out nicely. You can see that it picked up a lot of the detail. There's not too many bubbles or places where I would need to cut it back. Sometimes you can fill voids or like spaces that are missing material with some clay. So if you're ready to jump into resin casting, the resin that I use today is art resin. Art resin is an epoxy resin, and it is made to be easy to use by people either beginning to advanced. It is a 1-to-1 mix by volume, so you use an equal amount of each to make your casting. And this material is available online and also at hobby stores. One of the great things about art resin is that it has an especially long working time. Art resin has a working time of 45 minutes, which means that you have that amount of time to experiment with the piece and add dyes before the resin will be fully set and start to cure. For this casting, I removed my resin after 8 hours. At this time, the casting is set and hard to the touch. You'll notice that it won't be sticky or tacky, and it's still flexible as well. So I removed it from my mold and draped it over a Pyrex roll to give it some shape and curve. And so this is just one of the ways that you can experiment with this material. It's also good at this point, if you need to do any cutting or sanding. When it's soft, it's much easier to do. Art resin will be hard and set at 24 hours and then fully cured after 72. So that means after 3 days, it will be fully cured permanently. Well, so I hope you enjoyed learning how to make a mold today from silicone. This is the final resin casting piece that I made, and this is for my brother, an avid climber. So I hope you guys had fun, and I hope you learned something new. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and thank you so much.